Hi, this is Stefan from Conductor, and in this lecture, we're going to learn about the Kafka topic replication factor and what it implies for your consumers and your producers. So topics in Kafka, when you're doing stuff on your own machine, they can have a replication factor of 1, but usually when you are in production, that means you're having a real Kafka cluster, you need to set a replication factor greater than 1, usually between 2 and 3, and most commonly at 3. So that way, if a broker is down, that means the Kafka server is stopped for maintenance or for a technical issue, then another Kafka broker still has a copy of the data to serve and receive. So let's take an example to understand this better. We have topic A, it has 2 partitions and a replication factor of 2. So we have 3 Kafka brokers, and we're going to place partition 0 of topic A onto broker 101, partition 1 of topic A onto broker 102. So this is the initial. And then because we have a replication factor of 2, then we're going to have a copy of partition 0 onto broker 102 with a replication mechanism, and a copy of partition 1 onto broker 103 with, again, a replication mechanism. So as we can see here, we have 4, obviously, units of data because we have 2 partitions and a replication factor of 2. And we can see that brokers are replicating data from other brokers. So what does that mean? We go back to this. What if we lose broker 102? Okay. Well, as we can see, we have broker 101 and 103 still up, and they can still serve the data. So partition 0 and partition 1 are still available within our cluster. And this is why we have a replication factor. So in case of replication factor of 2, to make it very simple, you can lose 1 broker and be fine. So next, we have replicas, okay? And so therefore, we have a leader for a partition. And at any time, only 1 broker can be a leader for a given partition. And the rule is that producers can only send data to the broker that is the leader of a partition. So if we go back to this diagram we had from before, I added a little star on the leader of each partition. And we can see that broker 101 is the leader of partition 0, and broker 102 is the leader of partition 1. But broker 102 is a replica of partition 0, and broker 103 is a replica of partition 1. So the other brokers will replicate the data, and if the data is replicated fast enough, then each replica is going to be called an ISR. An ISR means in-sync replica, as opposed to out-of-sync replica. So if the data is replicated well, then they are synchronized in terms of the data replication. Okay, so this is very important because there is a very important aspect of leaders. So by default, and this is a default behavior with leaders, your producers are going to only write into the leader broker for a partition. So if the producer knows it wants to send data into partition 0, as we've seen from the previous mechanism, and we have a leader and an ISR, then the producer knows that it should only send the data into the broker that is the leader of that partition. And that is a very important Kafka feature. And the Kafka consumers, they're going to read by default only from the leader of a partition. So that means that the consumer will only request data from the leader broker 101. That means that broker 102 in the previous example is a replica just for the sake of replicating data. And in case the broker 101 goes down, then it can become the new leader and serve the data for the producer and the consumer. That is the default behavior. But as we'll notice in Kafka, and Kafka has evolved a lot since I've been teaching it, over 5 years of teaching Kafka, and has evolved a lot, and there's been new features added over time. And because actually many companies use older versions of Kafka and sometimes way older versions of Kafka, I'm going to specify what has changed across time for newer Kafka versions. And even if I know you're only use the latest Kafka version, for example, 3.0, whatever is happened before or after, I still have to tell people what is the new features and when they did appear, okay? So there is a new feature called the Kafka Consumer Replica Fetching, which happened as part of Kafka 2.4, which allows consumer to read from the closest replica. So we have the broker 101, which is the leader of partition 0, receiving data from the producer. It's going to replicate data into the ISR partition 0 of broker 102. And then it's possible for our consumer to read from the replica itself, okay? Why? Well, this may help to improve latency because maybe the consumer is really close to broker 102. And also, maybe it's going to help decrease network cost if using the cloud, because if things are in the same data center, then you have little to no cost. We'll see this in details when we get to the programming section, but I just wanted to introduce that concept to you, that it is now possible. So that's it for this lecture. We've learned about brokers and replication factors, and now leaders and what it means for producers and consumers. So I hope you like this lecture, and I will see you in the next lecture.